New week, 4 new topics selected by you, a whole new conversation. Welcome to 360 Speedway. Hello and welcome back to the Oval Office here at 360 Speedway HQ, and thank you for your warm response to our debut episode last week. A brand new episode in the making, and I can exclusively confirm it feels a whole lot less nerve-wracking than it did just 1 week ago. Straight on then with the action, let's introduce this week's handlebar heroes who will take on this week's discussion. Encouragingly for me, one has returned from last week, but we have 2 brand new faces to present to you this evening. First up, making a return to the 360 studio, made his debut, of course, just last week. A man revelling in the success of his own short on YouTube. If you don't know what that is, go and have a Google and have a look. Welcome back to Stuartrobson. Welcome back, Stuart.
Thank you, Derek. Great to be back.
You enjoy your week, Stuart?
I did, yes. It was nice, nice long weekend, and then I managed to get up to Sunderland for a few days, and unfortunately I'm back in work, but it's a short week, so yeah, it's all good.
It's a short week. Thank you, Stuart. Good to have your company once again. Okay, next up, making his 360 Speedway debut, he's ridden the bikes, he's managed the teams, heavily associated, of course, with all things Peterborough Panthers. Good evening and welcome, Carljohnston.
Evening, Derek. Evening, everyone.
Looking very relaxed, Carol. Taking it in your stride.
Yeah, take it all in your stride. I get used to this camera stuff.
Yeah. I'm not sure I ever will. Thank you, Carol. Good to have your company. Thanks for stepping into the 360 spotlight. And finally, and absolutely not least, a man making his 360 Speedway team debut tonight. We've not heard from this guy in some time. Showing no signs of slowing down, though, I think, outside of Speedway. The man, the myth, the USA and Wolves legend. Good evening and welcome, Ronniecorrey.
Hello everyone, thanks for having me on.
You're looking really well, Ronnie. Good to have your company. Is life treating you well?
Yes, I can't complain. Boys are healthy, everything's good, business is good. Can't have complaints there.
Excellent. Well, listen, Ronnie, thanks for stepping into the 360 studio, and I hope you're looking forward to picking off some Speedway related topics. So collectively, this evening, our handlebar heroes for episode 2. Okay, a new episode means 4 new discussion topics as voted for you, the 360 Speedsters. Thank you very much for getting behind our poll, which is generally published every Sunday night. So look out for that on social media. Get involved, select the 4 topics that you want us to discuss in the forthcoming episode. If you don't see any topics there listed that you would like us to discuss, please just comment and propose those topics, and we'll pick up and consider building them into a future episode. And please do also take some time just to send us your comments, generally about anything, your team, recent results, tracks, incidents, whatever it might be. Just drop us a comment and we'll try and feature them in a forthcoming episode. Okay, straight on with the action and into Fan Pulse Lap 1, as we call it. So this is the first topic as voted for by you guys out there, and we've just come off the back of a long Easter weekend. Hope you enjoyed some downtime. There was less Speedway available to us because of the British Easter weather, but Easter being a time of resurrection, it led us into posing the question: the return of which 3 clubs in the UK would most transform British Speedway? So, think about potentially any geographic deficit. So are there pockets of the country where there is no Speedway that would lend itself to supporting a club and attracting some attendance? Would it make sense to bring back some of the clubs of yesteryear who were much more better supported than others? Let me pose that question first and foremost to Ronniecorrey. Which three clubs are in your heart and mind that you think would make the biggest impact to bring them back?
Well, first one will probably be my home club, Wolverhampton, and I miss him very much. It's been a great track for a lot of people, and there's been a lot of atmosphere for years. Just still can't believe it's actually gone, you know. But it's just I don't know what to do on a Monday anymore. It's just not fair.
And you just remind me, Ronnie, how many seasons did you have at Monmore?
Roughly about 18, roughly around there. So yeah, it was quite a few years around there.
So 18 seasons out of how long was your career in total? 20 odd?
Oh gosh, I started in 1980 in juniors, and I finished roughly after a couple of bad injuries, about 2007, 2008, somewhere there.
We were talking to one of your former teammates, Stuart McDonald, of course, was on episode 1, and Stuart talks very enthusiastically and emotionally about his times at Wolverhampton, and I know Monmore has a big place in Stuart's heart, and that must be exactly the same for you, Ronnie.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, everybody, it was just good grounds, good people, it was a good racetrack. You know, it was just really good place to be. You know, I was very comfortable there. You know, I mean, you could ask for better to have Peter Adams and Chris Van Stratton, two fantastic people to work with. You know, they're just very understanding people. They work with you well, and you know, you have any problems, they're there to help, and you know, that's what it should be all about, really. And working together, that's what makes a big difference, really. I mean, that's how we won a couple of leagues. You know, is everybody working together and you know, making it all put together.
Yep, and the Wolverhampton faithful, of course, so passionate about their speedway, and I do feel for them alongside all the supporters of other resting clubs, is what I like to call them these days. But so you've called out Wolverhampton. What other clubs do you think would make the biggest impact if we could bring them back?
Well, I think the other one would be Coventry. I think it's sad to see it still sitting there the way it is. You know, they should have done something with that a long time ago, but I mean, that track has been all the world qualifiers, the British finals, World Team Cups. It's just been a really good racing track, good atmosphere, and had really good facilities. You know, there's another one that really should have been closed, really, and it's just sitting there rotting away at the moment.
And I was reading actually just in the last few days. I mean, there still seems to be a very active campaign around resurrecting Speedway at Brandon, and you know that. I seen Chris Harris in particular was trying to encourage Speedway fans to get involved in some of the much of its planning applications or some of the planning legislation, at least in that area, and there seems to be some reasonable confidence that it might be something that can be realised, that Coventry Bees could come back. Stuartrobson, a former club of yours.
I think it'd be great. I mean, it needs some work. I think it's been a bit damaged and destroyed a little bit, but the track's still there. Everything's still there. It just needs a bit of a fresh up, really. But I would love to see that come back. It might even get me back on a bike. You never know. There's something we'll hold you to, Ronniecorrey. Stuartrobson, Ronnie's mentioned Coventry, and that was a former stomping ground of yours, Stuart. Would Coventry feature in the top 3 clubs that you would like to bring back?
Absolutely, yes, 100%. I had a lot of my career was spent with Coventry, and I loved it there. It was great, and I still live in the area. And yes, it's a shame, like Ronnie said, it's a shame to see it sitting there rotten. There's so much damage to the stadium now. There's a lot of work needs doing, but it could be brought back. The grounds are still there. The base of it all is still there. It just needs the time, the effort, and the money. Putting into it, and it would, it could be a great stadium again.
So, I mean, Coventry Speedway, you're absolutely steeped in history. I'm old enough to remember, Charles Ochiltree and the Ochiltree family, and their tenure of Coventry Speedway went way back to the early decades of last century, and there still seems to be a swell of support, and I think the Speedway public would really get behind bringing Coventry back.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. There is a big campaign. There's still going on for it, and like you said, Chris, funny enough, saying on Facebook tonight about Chris Harris's efforts as well. And we've just got to all get behind it. And the Rugby Borough Council seem to be very keen. From what I've read, I only see what I read on social media, but they seem to be keen from what I've read, and it would be really good to get it back. And I don't actually go to Speedway anymore now to watch at all because I just don't get a chance, to be fair. But if Coventry did come back, I would try and get back to there.
Yeah. Stuart, we mentioned in episode 1, but we at one point we touched on some of your former clubs, and a high number of them, unfortunately, no longer functioning currently. What other clubs beyond Coventry might you highlight to bring back and make a bit of an impact?
It's a difficult one. I probably will go with Wolves as well. I'll probably agree with Ronnie there. I loved Wolves. I loved going there. It was great. And the Coventry Wolves derbies were brilliant. They were. And I loved the track there. It was so consistently good. And even if it was bad, it was still good, because it was a track that I could ride, and I knew I could ride it, so I just used to get out there and get on with it, and I loved it. Yeah, that would be another one I would say. It would have been great to have actually done a season with Wolves, but it never happened, unfortunately. But it was definitely one I'd like to see back.
Any others top of mind, Stuart? Any other former clubs, tracks?
There's so many to go from here, isn't it? You've got to think of location as much as anything, like you say. Peterborough was always good. I enjoyed my meetings there. Sorry, not my time there. My meetings there most of the time. Bradford, that was great. It was. I only managed to ride there a couple of times in my first season. I think in '95. My first season with Coventry. Sorry, in '95. I think it closed down after that, and I didn't get a chance to go back. Obviously, after that. But that, I think, if it did come back, that could be another sort of Bellevue type place. And because of the way the stadium is, the way the track is, it could hold a big crowd and potentially run a GP there. It's that type of place.
Mm-hmm. Good choices and good rationale, Stuart. Carljohnston, I suspect that Robbo might have mentioned one of your picks for obvious reasons.
Yeah, obviously Peterborough. We'd love to see it come back. Obviously, we know what's going on with house builders and things at the minute, and hand on heart, I don't think it will ever come back at the showground, which is really unfortunate, really disappointing, because I think the facilities that we had there was one of the best. Obviously you've got the Bellevue new stadium now, but I think Peterborough was up there with, we were spoiled. I've always said we were spoiled because of the stand that we had, the facilities, the area that we was using, and the racetrack. I think the racetrack was one of the best in the country, by a long shot, and I think that's why. Again, similar to Coventry, we held major meetings there over the years. Which was, good for the city, good for Speedway, good for British Speedway. I'd love to see it come back, and obviously we're still fighting. I'm part of the consortium to bring Speedway back to Peterborough. If it's not at the showground, then hopefully it'll be somewhere else. We're fighting hard, and we're using the same law people as what's been used at Coventry. Brian Connolly, who's involved with us, has obviously been involved at Coventry, Lakeside, now Swindon. So he's got his fingers everywhere, and he's trying to save British Speedway from developers, basically. So obviously Peterborough would be definite, my number one choice. Coventry, without a shadow of a doubt, because of its history. It's central. Which is ideal for people, and again, look at the meetings that they've had at Coventry, the riders that have come through the system as well at Coventry. Fantastic stadium, fantastic track. Disappointing to see how it is now, but hopefully in the next couple of years we can see bikes, riding again, racing again round Brandon. Fingers crossed. Another one I'd like to see back is Eastbourne. That's where I started as a junior on the junior track. we all need these junior tracks to bring riders through. As Ronnie will probably know from the States, it's massively important to bring riders through. And I was part of Alan Johns' sort of academy down there, and I just look at the riders that come through that system. It's unbelievable, really. You just look at the riders that have been British League champions that have come through there. And it's another one that's a shame, and a southern track would be really good. It'd certainly give us plenty more travelling.
Absolutely. It's actually is a fascinating subject. There could be so many really interesting pub chats, conversations among Speedway fans about selecting 3 clubs to bring back, and you guys have picked out perhaps some of the stronger candidates, and thankfully, Peterborough, Coventry, maybe even Eastbourne, to name but 3, and Wolverhampton. There are very capable people behind the scenes. Not flattering you, Carl Johnson, but there's very capable people behind the scenes who are determined, dedicated. They know what they're doing. They're pretty switched on, and they hopefully can orchestrate a successful campaign to sway the local councils, etc., to lend their support to sourcing land or helping to fund the stadium or the facility for entertainment, etc. So just thinking about it, Wolverhampton, Peterborough, Cradley is obviously steeped in history. Bradford we've mentioned. Hull, I mentioned Hull last week. I sense via social media that there's a significant swell of support to bring Hull Vikings back. Swindon we've mentioned. Robbo, Thurrock Raceway is still there. It doesn't look, it's not in a healthy state, but it's still there, to your point. And I'm also aware that there's some people trying to resurrect Speedway in Somerset as well. So, even if 2 or 3 of these campaigns came to fruition and were successful in the next handful of years, that regardless of which clubs it would be, that would be a major boost, shot in the arm to British Speedway. I'm sure it would.
100%, and obviously because at the minute we're obviously quite active within what we're doing with the council, with Peterborough City Council, and the things that we're doing. It's very, very difficult. We've come up against so many hurdles that we're the most successful sporting team in Peterborough. Take the football team. Okay, it draws a crowd, of 7,000 to 11,000. But we're the most successful sporting team in the city. And Peterborough City Council have basically just washed their hands of us. It's as if we've never existed. For the 50 odd years that we've been here, we might as well have only been running 12 months. It's just crazy that I see the tracks. Obviously Swindon's in the same position, housing, Coventry obviously in the same position, not so much now. Lakeside the same. It's all development, and I go greedy developers. We don't need 1,800 houses locally to us to take up land that was gifted to the people of Peterborough as a showground, and now it's been sold for development that we don't need. We haven't got the infrastructure. The councils don't see this. All they see is what the income from that is, and they don't see enough from Speedway. But obviously at Peterborough we had the showground, which raised a lot of money. It made a hell of a lot of money for the area, and that's sort of been put on the back burner. And it's like, oh no, houses are the way to go. And I think there's a lot of Speedway tracks. Obviously Edinburgh in the same position. They're being eaten up by these developers. But I've had this discussion before. When Sky TV come in and put money into British Speedway, should the BSPA at the time been investing in Speedway tracks, in the survival of Speedway tracks? Should they have been buying some of these Speedway tracks? So we're now in this position that we're in, that we shouldn't be. And if they'd paid that money years ago, we would never have been in this position. We would have had 30 tracks, 35 tracks running now. and we wouldn't have been in the same position. We wouldn't be talking about the things that we are.
Yeah, Carol, that's a fascinating view on that, and it opens up a whole different discussion probably. But listen, let's keep across some of these stories, and as they develop, and as we think that things might be progressing in the right direction for Peterborough, Wolves, or whoever, Coventry, then let's return to this and have a deeper dive on the future and the return of some of these clubs. But thanks, 360 Speedsters, for choosing that subject and getting us off to a glorious start on episode 2. Okay, let's move on. Let's keep the content moving and fresh. Next up, Fan Pulse Lap 2. You have voted, we have listened. Let's spotlight youth development, a British bright future. So I would like to just tee this one up. So here's my starting point through observations. So, in modern day Speedway or current day Speedway, there are far less clubs than we had in the past, right? You look at some of the construct of the first and second division of yesteryear, and there was many more clubs around. However, to British Speedway's credit, I firmly believe that the youth scene and the organisation around it nowadays is much better than it ever was in the past. So in the past, British Speedway relied on second halves. There might have been the odd training facility, but literally the odd one. And younger riders didn't really get too much track time. But nowadays we've got the National Development League, the National Development Trophy. There's various academies. There are various dedicated training schools. And Neil Vatcher and his colleagues, of course, have really structured the British youth championship scene. So my starting point in terms of we've never had it so good in terms of bringing through British youngsters at different age categories. Carljohnston, what's your view on the youth scene?
Yeah, I think I think this leads on from the first part, is obviously bringing the youth through the junior tracks, the junior system, and that's from the 90 cc's, the 125s, the 150s through to the 250s and up to 500s. Obviously Neil's done a fabulous job with the British youth, and obviously when I was team manager and promoter at Peterborough, we had some of that youth come through, and and it's really good to see. And like you say, there's a lot more out there now for the boys than what there was when I first started riding, and the same with Stuart. There was never this real youth development when we was about. It was second halves, and you rode anywhere you could to for 4 laps just to get on the bike. And the opportunities that are there now is amazing. And some of the riders coming through, I look at them, I think they're fantastic little riders, and with the right backing, this certainly could go the whole way, and certainly could make really good Premiership riders. If not, obviously the majority of them disappeared to Poland now, which is a shame, but we want to keep them on these shores. But yeah, the boys they've done a fantastic job with the youth setup.
Stuartrobson, there is still a step up to make from youth Speedway or national development level into championship and then on to Premiership, but the structure appears to be more, maybe more scientific, maybe less down to lady luck. The structure is there to give track time to the youngsters and develop them and allow them to make that progress.
Yes, it's like Carl says, it's so much better than it was when we were sort of starting out, and it's probably as good as it's ever been. Like you said as well, it is really they're really concentrating on not just the actual riding side, but they do a bit in the background. They do the college course thing that they do, and they get the kids down to, I don't even know where it is now, I can't remember. They get them to one of the colleges somewhere, and they go through things. It's not just it's about the right, the training right, and mental side of it. It's not just about riding the bike, and they're really pushing on that side of it as well. And yeah, it is fantastic now, and there's been some already some really good riders come through, and there's a lot more on the way.
Absolutely. Suddenly Speedway's become a bit of a science, Stuart.
It is. That's the thing. It's science in sport. I mean, I did a college course in when I left school, and part of the college course was science in sport. It was kind of cut out then as well, but it's even more so now. It's a bit more about.
Ronniecorrey, thinking back in the day, Ronnie, you know, British Speedway used to look to Denmark or Sweden, and they always had a very regimented, very structured youth development scene. Kids were on bikes at 4 years of age or 5 years of age, etc. But the UK in recent years does appear to have closed that gap, I would suggest.
I think so. I mean, interesting listening to these two guys, you know, because I've kind of gone out of the sport a little bit, and I know it's kind of disappeared a little bit, but it's really good to hear that, you know, they're really pushing on the youngsters, because they never really did when we were back in it. You know, they had to give them a little small part towards the end of the night, and it really wasn't enough really to, you know, bring them up. It's glad to see that they got some more leagues going, and a lot more chances for the youngsters to get on the track and put some time on the track and get a chance to get involved in the sport. You know, I think it's fantastic and very interesting listening to these guys and seeing where the changes are going and what is going on. It's new knowledge to me, really. It's catching up on everything. It's great.
And you know, Stuart, I think it was you or Carol that mentioned earlier, you know, that there seems to be a whole conveyor belt of young talent. You know, Cooper Rushton is one young man who seems to have stolen the spotlight in recent meetings in the National Development League, and in one day he scored 34 points in 2 meetings. So there's a young man that appears to have a bright future. But looking at some of the more established riders, Tom Brennan, Anders Rowe, Leon Flint, those guys not so many years ago came through that youth development programme, and here they are now representing the country in international tournaments.
Yeah, that's right. They're three. A couple of the guys who really stood out and really shone. Tom Brennan, especially at the moment, he's really making big sort of name for himself, and he's doing fantastically well. The other guys are all doing well. Tom is just possibly slightly ahead at the moment, but hopefully the other guys will go the same direction and catch up with him. And there's more to come. Like I said, there are more young guys coming through. And I think it's William Cairns. He'll be 16 in, is it
June? I think June, early June, I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah, going to be with Poole. I think what a fantastic signing for Poole that is, and good luck to Will. He's very good, and I'd love to see him do well as well. They're all there's Dan and Joe Thompson both came through there. At the moment, Dan is doing extremely well. I do watch the scores, and his scores are standing out as well. And he's not necessarily just riding at reserve; he's in the team, and as well. He's still scoring the big points. So yeah, that's another good example. Other good examples of this youth development. What's been going on. It's been a few years now, and it's shown that it was worth it. I remember you mentioned the Denmark and Sweden. I remember quite a few years back now. Denmark were doing it a long time back, and they had a bit of a period where, because Denmark were always producing some really good riders all the time, they always had world-class riders, but they went through a stage where over a couple of seasons they just weren't quite there, and then within a couple of seasons they were like world champions again. And it just proves that it does work, and Denmark have produced some literally some world champions through it all. Yeah. It'd be nice to see if we could do it. I mean, I don't know if Wolfie came through that sort of training, or if it was more just the way I did it or not. But obviously, 3-time world champ. He came through. I think he was 16 when I was down at Rye House, and I'm not really sure if it had all started then or not. But yeah, it's be nice if we could get a couple more guys following his footsteps.
The one country that always defies all logic for me is Australia, because they don't have the domestic, the league structure. So yes, they have. Think of the scale of Australia for a start. So they've got all these tracks spread out across this vast continent, but there's another country who, despite not having domestic leagues, etc., or that discipline, they have a never-ending conveyor belt of talent, and they have had, in my whole lifetime watching Speedway, there's been a whole series of world-class Australian Speedway riders, and that's continuing to this day. But the Cook brothers have landed, and they're doing pretty well, to name but two. But Carol, you'll have seen Ryan Sullivan back in the day flying around the showground, and you think of Lee Adam and Jason Lyons, the Holder brothers, yada yada yada. Aussies have ruled Speedway for quite some time.
Yeah, obviously, I've been amongst a lot of the Aussie boys. Certainly, like you say, with Ryan, when we was both sort of teenagers when he was at Peterborough and Crumpy at the same time. Ryan for me had to work hard for what he got. He was one of these sort of wasn't really a natural Speedway rider. He always had to work hard for what he got, whereas Crumpy was always a natural. You could see his ability. He was always a natural ability, and everything sort of happened for him. Whereas Ryan had to work hard for what he got. But yeah, I think it's the attitude. The attitude is the key thing, because when I had Jack Holder at Peterborough and he was our number one, and he was only a young lad, he turned around to me and he said, "I want to be world champion. That's why I'm riding Speedway." That's all he thought about. I want to be world champion. I said, what about just going out and riding and enjoying the racing? And no, I'm a world champion. That's what. And that attitude is like, and I look at him now and I think you can see how that attitude's got him to where he is now. That I want to be the best. And they're all like that. I don't think there's one Australian rider that you could turn around and speak to that doesn't want to be world champion. And I think that's where the British riders probably fall down a little bit, because we're there more, let's go out and enjoy it. Let's go and do a bit of Speedway. Yeah, well, let's have some fun. I've been around riders, over the years that they've probably had more drink than they have laps around tracks. Which for me is, that's the difference. You don't see the Aussie boys doing it. Okay, you might do it at Cardiff the odd time. But they're here to make a living. They're here to be the best. They fly halfway across the world to race Speedway, to race bikes. So they have to be in that mindset. And I think that is the difference. It's that mentality. The Danish boys, I've always said, they've been so professional. The only one, there's a couple that spring to mind. Ulrich's one of them, and Michael Palm-Toft are probably not the most professional, as in Danish Speedway riders. Whereas all the others, their kit is like, it's pristine. When they come over here as 16, 17-year-olds, and their kit is unbelievable. They've got these mega, super long wheelbase sprinters, and we're driving around in, in 15-year-old transits.
Yeah.
That is the difference. They got 2-year-old vans. They got equipment coming out their ears, 3-4 bikes. It's just a different level. And I think over the years, obviously, as our boys are now getting better, they're now getting into the same mindset, and you can see that adjustment in things.
Ronnie, a word or two about your own compatriots. The United States have punched above their weights at World Championship level. 70s, 80s, 90s. Greg was a bit of a phenomenon, of course, on his own right. But perhaps in recent years, the talent has dried up a little bit from the States coming to Europe.
I think so, yeah. I mean, we got a couple of youngsters that are coming up, but it is changed a bit. I mean, people in the States, it's just more of an enjoyable thing in this now. They got a couple of tracks running now, and they are working on a few more, I think. They got Bakersfield and a couple other ones going. But we don't have the group of youngs like we used to have. We used to have quite a group of riders back in the days. You can go back to Ricky Miller and Lance, and it goes on and on and on to all of us, and come over when I was young as I was. I think Greg and Billy came over about 4 years after me, so it was quite interesting, really. I had a couple of years on them, but I think it's sad to see the sport kind of go away over there in the States, but I think they're struggling the same thing, trying to keep the grounds going, trying to keep the racetracks going, and end of the day, there's no money in it over there. So, I mean, if you're doing it for fun. So it's coming out of your own pocket, or if you can help other people, help you out. So it does make it a bit difficult for young riders, really.
Yeah. And credit to Steve Evans and all the work that Steve does out in the States to plough that lonely furrow and keep those tracks and keep the crowds coming in to watch some speedway action.
I think we got a couple of good ones coming up, so it's just a matter of time.
Ronnie, I didn't want you to miss out, Ronnie. If you watched last week's show, Ronnie, you will have seen that I presented the guys with their own action figure. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that. So I didn't want you to miss out, Ronnie. So I did go to the trouble of making one for you, and there he is. There he is. I think
Very nice.
I think that's rather good, Ronniecorrey. Yeah,
that's good, man. I like it.
Carljohnston. I haven't made one of you yet, but I think I will.
No.
I'll line one up for you as well.
Hey, those are good black pair of leathers I used to have back in the days too. I remember.
There you are. See, it's all lifelike, Ronnie. All lifelike.
My goodness.
Okay, listen. That'll do for Fans Pulse Lap 2. 360 Speedsters, as you know, we are a shiny new Speedway podcast. We're doing our best to give you a voice, allow you to influence our discussion agenda. And all I can ask in return, please, could you help us to grow? So please like and comment and share everything you see from us on social media. We're across all of the main platforms. If you see any output from 360, please just give us a like, add the odd comment, say hello, and encourage some of your Speedway community, your Speedway friends to get involved and give us a follow as well. And finally, for now, please subscribe. Hit the subscribe button to this YouTube channel, and it would be good if you hit the thumbs up as well and added the odd comment below some of the podcast output, and it all helps to kickstart that YouTube algorithm that will bring us to the attention of some other people as well. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks to those of you who have taken some time out in the past few days, the past week, to send in some messages. We've received messages in different forms, some in email, some on Facebook Messenger, and thankfully the majority through WhatsApp. So thanks for taking advantage of the dedicated 360 Speedway WhatsApp integrated with Facebook. No one yet has submitted any voice notes via WhatsApp, so who's going to be the first and bravest 360 viewer to submit a WhatsApp voice note? It could be you. Okay, let's on with the text message we have received. So Rob from Cromer, my geography is on par. Cromer, I think, is Norfolk, right? North coastal resort in Norfolk. Anyway, Rob says, I am relatively pleased with the start made by Kingsland Stars. Bomber is a trump card at reserve. He certainly is. Much more to come from Quetch, Jan Quetch. Kingsland have got an interesting side, a very workmanlike side. Jan Quetch, of course, is a Grand Prix star. And yeah, to your point, Rob, possibly more to come from that young man. Still probably finding his feet a little bit on some of the circuits in Britain, but a big blow, of course, to have lost Ben Cook through injury for 5 or 6 weeks. Ben was struggling a little bit this season. He hadn't at all found his scoring touch for the Stars, but yeah, an interesting side, and good luck to you, Rob, and the Stars for the rest of the season. Next up, Phil from Berwick upon Tweed, to be precise. The lads were desperately unlucky on Saturday night. Drew Kemp, sensational. Craig Cook and Peter Kilderman looked the business. Yeah, it wasn't the start that the Berwick promotion, Berwick riders and supporters will have wanted, to lose their opening home fixture to Glasgow in the BSN series qualifying section. And it looked at one point that Glasgow were going to run away with it a little bit, but to the Bandits' credit, they fought back, and in the end only went down by 4 points. A series of engine failures, a lot of bike stoppages in the home camp on Saturday night, which certainly wouldn't have helped. And it'll be interesting to see how the Bandits fare at home to Edinburgh this Saturday night. So thanks for taking the time, Phil. Jess from Cleethorpes, Lincolnshire, I think. Jess writes, I'm already a bit concerned that us Scots are not strong at home this year. We were pushed too close by Redcar, says Jess. I think that was possibly only the second home meeting of the season for Scunthorpe. Again, a change, well, I say, much the same Scunthorpe side, if I'm honest, than last year. A bit of a change in the number one race jacket position. Otherwise, pretty much the same. One of the Kennedy brothers apart. But to be fair, Redcar are a quality side, right? You know, we've already seen them lift some silverware at pairs level, and there's no doubt that the Bears have got lots of points right throughout that 1 to 7 of theirs. So no shame in being pushed even at home by the Bears at this early stage of the season, and I'm sure there's more to come from the Scorpions. Hang in there, Jess. Nana G from Whitney, I'm not quite sure what Whitney is. Nana G, loving the early form of Jordan Jenkins and Little Luke, Killeen, that is. Pity we lost out to Poole, but made up big time at Plymouth. Yeah, Poole seem to have a bit of a hoodoo over the Cheetahs in the championship. The Poole sides always do well around Cowley, and Oxford disappointingly lost in a golden heat, so tied on the night, 45 all, and Richard Lawson and Zach Cook did the business for Poole in the golden heat to take the extra points for Poole in the BSN series. But lots of positive signs for a reshaped, new-looking Cheetah side, and Sam Masters, Jordan Jenkins, Luke Killeen certainly started the season well. Jeff Y from Nuneaton writes that the Leicester Lions are already roaring loudly, says Jeff. Sam the Man is leading the way, and we have a solid top 5 home and away. Sorry to see Sam Hagan leave so soon. Welcome though to Dan Jilks. Yeah, a very early season change in the Lions camp. Sam Hagan hasn't really had much of a chance to settle into Premiership racing this season, but already Stuart Dixon has wielded the axe, and in comes Dan Jilks to steady the ship, as Stuart will see it, in the reserve berth, the rising star berth for Leicester. And Leicester, you know, they've picked up points on the road. They've won at Birmingham on opening night. They've won at Oxford last week, and I think they might have had a slip up at home. I'm not certain, but a promising start for the Lions, and recognised by Jeff. Thanks for taking the time to message 360 Speedway, Jeff. And finally, I think tonight, the final message that we received from Sean O from Sheffield. Feels like our team changes make us weaker overall. I think we've lost that edge and scoring power we had with another big hitter in Ty. Danyon did nothing wrong. So that obviously referring to the team changes announced this midweek. Jason Sedgman and Louis Kerr returning to Sheffield, where they've plied their trade in the past at Championship and Premiership levels. Known quantities, a safe pair of hands perhaps, and that's been the strategic decision by Simon Stead and the Sheffield management as a replacement for Ty Woofenden, who's clearly going to be sidelined for some considerable time, I would imagine, and Danyon Hume, unfortunately, again, very early season to be the victim of a team change, but young Danyon is going to have to focus meantime on his championship campaign with Berwick Bandits. So listen, thank you one and all for taking time to send in some messages. Look forward to you. If you've got any comments about your team, a result, a track, a decision, whatever it might be, drop us a note. WhatsApp would be the easiest and most convenient way to do it. But feel free to take note of the various social media accounts of 360 Speedway and use your favourite to drop us a comment. Back to your discussion topics. We're now entering Fan Pulse Lap 3, and another interesting topic. British Speedway operates 2 senior speedway leagues, the Championship and the Premiership, respectively. But what are the comparative merits of each of those leagues? And is variety the spice of life as far as modern day British Speedway is concerned? So lads, you know, we have 9 clubs in the Championship, which is the so-called second tier of British Speedway, the Premiership, the top flight, has 7 clubs. The Premiership chooses to run its league fixtures on a 2 home, 2 away basis. So lots of meetings, but perhaps not so much variety. Whereas the Championship, with 2 more clubs in terms of variety, only has a 1 home and 1 away league championship format. So I guess I'm just looking to pick your brains and get your thoughts in terms of the current structure of British Speedway, Premiership, Championship, doing the slightly different things respectively. Who has it most right, would you say? Carol, I'll let you come in first, because you've experienced both of those leagues in fairly recent times.
Yeah, I have, and I've always said, obviously the Premiership is supposedly our best product. Personally, when Peterborough was in the Championship I felt was the best product for British Speedway. I felt it was more entertaining than the Premiership. It was certainly, when you looked, there wasn't such a gap between your number 1s and your number 7s, so the teams were always strong. They was always competitive. It was hard. Rob will tell you, the Championship is a hard league. You've got no top line riders, okay, that you've got in the Premiership now, and the Premiership has improved over the last couple of years. So at the time when we was obviously in the Championship, in our last year was 2018 in the Championship, I thought it was the best product. Over the last couple of years, probably the Premiership has now taken that mantle because of the riders that have come back into the Premiership, the top riders that have come back. We've encouraged them back into the league, and I think that makes all the difference. So yeah, I do think now the Premiership is our number 1, and it's certainly something that we should work hard of keeping the top riders if we can, and encouraging more to come. But we've also got to obviously encourage our own talent to come through as well.
Rob, well, let me bring you in. It's an interesting thing. Carol's touched on it. In the last 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons, the Premiership has really been revamped. So a lot of the big hitters, a lot of the Grand Prix riders, or certainly the better riders on the planet, have stepped back into British Speedway, potentially because of the fixed race nights. I'm sure that's been a big factor, and because of the relatively fixed short season, I would imagine, are the main factors. But so the Premiership has, I would imagine, to Carol's point, has I think it justifies the Premiership tag these days. But on the flip side, supporters of Premiership clubs don't necessarily have the variety of teams and visiting riders that the Championship does.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely improved a lot over the last couple of seasons, since they have sort of enticed the top boys back, the GP boys. It'd be nice to get a few more, but we do have some big names coming back over, and it's great to see them back. I don't know, it's not as strong as it was in the past, but it's definitely improved over what it has been over the last few years. Because when I was still riding, when a lot of the GP boys weren't over here, the leagues, there wasn't really a difference between the 2 leagues. A lot of the same riders were in both leagues, and the difference in team strengths. Okay, they were a little bit stronger in the Premiership, but not a great deal like what it used to be. There used to be a huge gap from one to the other. But yeah, it's definitely. I agree with Carl. The Premiership, the Championship was a better product back in the day, and now I think the Premiership has took the sort of title back on that as such.
Ronnie, you must notice the difference, Ronnie, between modern day Speedway or British Speedway and in your day. When I was brought up as a Glasgow fan, Steve Lawson was the number 1 in the National League, right? He was top performer for a number of seasons, but Steve Lawson, even being the top rider in the National League, which was the 2nd division, would only ever be a number 6 or a number 7 when he was called into a British League side from time to time. So the gulf back in the day was certainly greater, more significant than it is nowadays, Ronnie.
Oh yeah, so I think it's changed a lot. I mean, Christ, when I first came over here, it was very competitive. I was young, and I was lining up for rides every race. Every race I was in was so competitive and so honored. And I remember getting pushed around and banged about, and just wondering where I was going to go with it all. But it took a little while to get my head straight, and then I did a bit of dating. But like you said, it's just there were so many riders back in the days back then when I started over here, and it was such a big league, and we had so many top leagues, and every top league was so competitive, and even the younger teams, in these days were still quite competitive. But there's been a lot of changes over the years, haven't they? And like I said, as the boys were saying, it's nice to see some of the top boys coming back and bringing the crowd back in again, and definitely making the Speedway a lot better over here. And it's good to see the younger lads still going too. But we've been talking about this for years with a couple of mates of mine about this. Is it going to all come back, or is it ever going to be a big league again, or is it all going to have to come into one big league? I don't know, but it's something that we've all been chatting about, and just hoping the sport's going to keep growing. We're going to keep the riders coming in, and we're going to keep the crowds going and sort of keep all the tracks we got now. But who knows? Who knows? I mean, I'm just glad to see everything's going well, and listening to these two guys and seeing some of the new riders coming in, and having the top boys coming back and being involved with the Premiership and the top riders again. And I think there's a lot more to come, and I'm just glad to see all that, really.
No, I love that sentiment, Ronnie. And 360 Speedway wants to talk up and be positive about British Speedway. Yes, we'll throw a few blows if we feel that that's merited and deserved. But there is a positivity around British Speedway currently. Yes, we would benefit, as we talked about earlier, from bringing back 2 or 3 clubs. What a difference that would make to add a few more clubs into the Premiership and maybe have a similar number in the Championship.
I think so. We definitely need some more leagues in the top league, don't we? Really, because these 7 leagues is not really enough to be running a top league, really, because you're seeing the same people every other week, and it gets kind of the same thing over and over again. We need at least another four in the top league to even it out a bit more, and get some more real racing going and get some more top riders in. Would be really good.
Carol, any thoughts, Carol, about we have a lot of doubling up and doubling down in modern day British Speedway, much more so than in the past, as we've kind of touched on already. But can you see a mechanism to reduce or even eliminate that and allow us to have one big league, which is something that a lot of Speedway fans would crave in British Speedway?
They would, and obviously this is talked about year on year about how can we reduce the doubling up. There's 2 things. One, is there enough riders to create a big league? No, I don't think. And 2, is financial. Can the boys that are riding now, say the British boys, if they're not doubling up, they're not earning enough money to ride. So for me, them riders that we've got would walk away. They would rather pack up and retire than put their life on the line every time they go out there. And I've always said this: the boys are there, they're entertainers. They go out, they entertain. They get hurt, as we've seen with Ty, as we've seen with riders, every year you get it, and we hate to see it, but it's the nature of the sport. But we all do it because we love it. We're all part of it because we love it. We know at some point you're going to get hurt, and the boys cannot survive just in one league with the money that's being paid to them. It just does not happen. And unfortunately, I'd love to see enough riders to make 2 leagues as we were in the day, but they're just not about, and it costs you too much. As going back to when we was running at Peterborough, the figures that riders, young riders that were 17, 18 years old, used to come to me and say, "I'll come and ride for this." It was ridiculous. It was like, I'm going, hang on a minute, my number one's not earning that. How? And these are boys that are learning their trade. They're not established riders. I'm not turning around to Ronniecorrey and telling him, no, you're not going to come and ride for us for that money, because he's worth every penny of it. You know, whereas some of these boys that are, you know, really, you're still wiping their nose for them, are asking for similar money that we would be paying a number one.
Yeah.
And you just can't do it, but they seem to think that that's how they survive, but they just cannot survive. You know, Rob, I will tell you, the money that you're getting paid for what you're doing, it's not enough. You know, it isn't enough. I'm sorry, you know, and I will support these boys, you know, 100%. You know, to ride the bikes like they do, they need to be paid the money, and even now, I don't think they're paid the money that they deserve.
Here. You guys would never have been paid enough to do what you do. Stuartrobson, what about an alternative to what Carol was talking about? Would be if there was a means to reduce the costs involved in the sport. So if we made the sport more affordable to riders to run bikes and all that good stuff, can you see any means of being able to achieve that or create some wins in that on that side of the sport?
This has been talked about for a long time. We reduce the costs. I mean, I remember this probably 15, 20 years ago, but the costs need to be reduced. But you know, they tried a long time ago. They tried to bring in 450 Honda engines. It was. When was that? Back in the late 90s, and everyone had bikes. You know, you turned up at the track. There was 14 bikes or however many bikes, and then you just got a random bike, and that's what you went out and raced on. But and that would reduce costs. I mean, the idea, okay, yeah, that's kind of the ideas there, but there was always one bike that was faster than all the others, and there was always one bike that was slower than all the others. And no matter who got on that faster bike, they won the race. And whoever got on the slower bike, no matter who you were, you lost the race. And that was one of the downsides. Even though they were all standard engines, they just worked differently. But the problem with doing that is it would we wouldn't be able to keep up with the rest of the world on the world scene. We would just get left behind completely, and then it would just be forgotten about. You know, England would get forgotten about, or GB, sorry. So that would, you know, we have to be able to keep up with them, and we have to develop as fast as they develop. And unfortunately, to do that, it costs an awful lot of money.
Do you know what? It's another fascinating topic, and I can foresee another deep dive opportunity to talk a bit more deeply about exactly that side of the sport. But right here, right now, we are going to move on. So let's move on to Fans Pulse Lap 4, the final lap of episode 2. And we're going to have a bit of a chat about that dark art, and it is a dark art form of track prep. And we're asking the question, is modern day track prep just shallow thinking? And that's a nod, gents, to I guess a belief, maybe it is a reality, that, you know, nowadays, because of the bikes, the lay-down bikes, the performance of the engines, perhaps even some of the skill and ability of the modern day riders, that track prep, generally speaking, means much less material being laid down on tracks, certainly around Europe, Poland in particular. I've talked to a lot of riders who race out in Poland, and they tell me, I wouldn't know, but they tell me it's quite easy to ride a track in Poland. You twist the throttle and you steer the bike. You don't have to worry about the bike reacting to track conditions, etc. What's your views, Rob? I'll bring you in on that, because you'll have experienced this firsthand in the not so distant past. Have you, over your career, Stuart, which started back in the 90s, did you see a discernible change in track prep in terms of the less material being used?
Yes, I definitely did. I mean, but it doesn't mean to say you didn't get slick tracks back in the day as well. Some tracks were renowned slick tracks, and that's just how they were. A lot of tracks did get slicker over time, and I think as much as anything, it is probably all down to cost. It's the more dirt you want to put on the track, the more effort you put into the whole preparation of it, relaying it, etc., etc. It costs a lot of money, and I think that probably plays a big part.
That makes sense. And how much, in your opinion, Stuart, does the transition to laydowns much did that dictate and determine how tracks might be prepared?
Well, when I first started, I started on uprights, but it was only for 2 seasons. The tracks have developed with the lay-down engines, and they've got faster and faster. Whether the tracks have developed for them or not, I don't know. I think it's just the way they went, and like I said, it all boils down to cost. The engines are getting faster and faster all the time, so they're trying to make things safer as well. So that's another thing. The less sort of dirt, clay content you put in a track, the less grippy it is. So the less chance there is of there being any sort of holes or soft spots, really, at least. So when you do still get them when it's been, especially if the weather's been a bit wet, you get soft spots because the rain water will always find the low spot and settle there. So they do change. They have changed. Like I say, I think it's probably as much with cost as anything else, and they'll probably is a little bit towards the safety side as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ronnie, let me bring you in. So you're another guy who you rode through that transition from uprights into laydowns. Did you see any correlation on that journey to track prep itself?
I think so. I mean, I rode the I was probably one of the last ones to get off the uprights because everybody else was playing around with the laydowns, and I was letting them get all the bugs out, and I was still beating them on the uprights. But once they got caught up and things got figured out, they were a lot quicker, gravity off the gates, and it was a different riding play, I think, when I first got on them. But like I said, we had a bit more dirt on the track back in the days, and you could make it work a little bit better. But nowadays, I have seen it. I mean, I think a lot of the days the tracks are getting a bit slicker, but just I don't think they're watering them enough, to be honest with you. I mean, if you remember the days when we started our first meeting, it would be muddy. I mean, we'd come in, we'd be covered head to toe, on the first race. You don't see that anymore. You see a track that's a bit wetter, and then they all want to pack up and go home. It's just like, it's only dirt, man. It's only mud, boys. Come on, man. But, you think about it, I was always in Heat 1, so you guarantee if I didn't make the gate, I'd be scraping 2 inches of mud off me from head to toe, and you just don't see that anymore, really. And like Stuart said, it's expense again, gravel and dirt's not cheap these days, and you got to have somebody who knows what they're doing too. You can't just throw it on the track and lay it. You got to be able to water it, lay it, and gravel it, pack it. It's a lot of time and a lot of skill, There were some good track guys back in the days, but I don't know about these days. But I mean, from what I can see, these kids are running flat out on slick tracks a lot of the times, and that's where all the accidents are coming because they're going so fast these days. All it takes is one little slide out or one clip, and you got chaos, don't you? So I think the dirt made the races back in my days. It made it slow down a little bit. It made it a bit more competitive. You made more mistakes. I think it made it more racing a lot better back in the days with more grip and more dirt for the crowd, myself.
Yeah. And of course, you had Alan Bridget was trackman at Monmore for some time, right. Ronnie. Ronnie, you also rode out in Poland back in the day. Do you recognise my description earlier about Polish tracks being easy to ride compared to the UK?
They're big, wide, and flat. I mean, I went over there. They didn't have a clue when I first went over there. I think I went to Poland in 1989, and I mean, they didn't even know how to wash bikes or maintain bikes or even set up bikes back then. I mean, they were trying to wash my bike with diesel and things like that. And honestly, I remember going over there and say, look, if we're going to do this, we need to show you guys how to do this. And it's funny saying that because people like me and Sam and some of the boys that went over there, we've kind of coached these guys, and showed them how to wash and maintain bikes and, take your chains off, do your clutches, do this, and do it all properly, balance your wheels. But you look at them nowadays, I mean, they're top of the league. These boys are very serious, and their equipment is amazing. And, some of these Polish riders these days are unbelievable, and we could just show the difference of what has gone and what, my days and back nowadays. It's definitely changed a lot. So it's, and the Polish tracks, like I said, I don't think there's any Polish track that's a slow track, actually. They are all big, wide, and fast tracks out there. So,
they don't do small technical tracks out in Poland.
No, man. They're all big. I remember the first time I went out there, I couldn't believe it. I walked up to Uno Resno when I rode for 7 years with them, and I walked down the track and just thought, oh my God, man. I was just like, I'd put 5 of my tracks in there from over in America. And it's learning a completely different riding skill too, because, in the States, we just ride around the line and go out the dirt a little bit and try to overtake, but you come over here, it's a completely different ballgame. You know, it took me a while to kind of learn that, you know, you got to use the track more, you got to cut back, you got to get out in the dirt, it's just a completely different ballgame. You know, it took me a while to get that all figured out, but you know, like I said, you know, it's a slick to dirt. At the end of the day, we all got to ride it, and we all got to set up for it. You know, at the end of the day, it's who set up first and who set up the best. You know, on the day.
100%, Ronnie. Carljohnston, you've seen the other side of the fence, Carol. So you've had to contend with riders wanting you to prepare the Peterborough track in 7 different ways at least, right?
14 different ways. It's never just the home riders that want it prepared one way. Guarantee you get the away riders, the track's this, the track's that, and it's but it's obviously every rider wants something different, you know, and you can't do that. We tell them we can prepare a track, that's it is what it is. You know, we can put the water down, we can rip it up, we can do whatever, but you know, you just go out there and ride it. I go back to like in probably the 90s, 95, 96, 97, Peterborough's track, when away teams used to turn up, they was frightened of it because it was that grippy, there was that much dirt, but it was so good to ride, and it was like, okay, it frightened people, but they loved it. It was there's that much dirt, you know, and it was, and Peterborough track over the year has changed so much, you know, and this goes down to, again, like Robbo said, it's down to cost.
Yeah.
Look at the shale pits that are in the UK now. There's one up near you that everybody seems to be getting shale from, but you've then got the carriage, you've got, you know, the transport costs. It's ridiculous, and tracks can't do it. They look at it and go, why am I going to pay, you know, £800 for a load of shale that's just going to be chucked over the fence next week? And unfortunately, that's how owners look at it. And that's why tracks have got slicker. That's why more clay's been mixed up in tracks. And I'll tell you now, when Keith Chapman come over to Peterborough and took on Peterborough, the track went from being one of the best tracks in the UK to being one of the worst because of the amount of clay that was put into it. And it didn't become a racetrack for me, but it was a cost thing. The clay was cheaper. Clay will mix with whatever. They tried different things. We've got local brickyards. They wanted brick dust. It's horrible. It's horrendous. As soon as you get water on it, it's like sand.
Yeah.
It's horrible. You know, stick to shale. Shale is what Speedway is meant to be ridden on. You know, keep it. We want the red stuff. I want white suits to come back red. You know, where they've been stained. We've all been through it. We've all had that over the years. You know, but that's how Speedway should be. You guys have got it up at Glasgow. You know, and it's perfect. That's a racetrack. Yeah.
Do you know what? Do you know what though? I'm being devil's advocate. So you know the quality of the racing out in Poland is as good as anywhere, right, on the planet. And we've already said that they run their tracks on the slicker side. So is there actually a case for slicker tracks allowing riders to feel more confident putting the bike where they want to put the bike with confidence, and that could lead to closer, more combative speedway than riders lifting and you know, where there's lots of dirt involved? Is that a thing?
Yes, it is. But I look at, again, Peterborough, one of the biggest tracks. When Peterborough was run slick, and you could always tell after the first 2 heats on how slick the racing was going to be by the times. So when Peterborough was slick, it was so fair. Everybody could ride it. Anybody could ride it. It was flat out. Anybody could ride it. Even your second half boys would go out there and not be they wouldn't get in trouble. You know, so Peterborough, you could run grippier. When it was slick, the racing was terrible, I think. Slightly grippier, better racing, much better. But then you go to somewhere like Newcastle and Wolverhampton, do you want it that grippy? You know, you know, it's the fence comes up at you fairly quickly at them places. You know, so do you want it? You know, could you run them slicker there? Potentially, yes. You know, these guys will tell you they've both been at these places and rode it in grippy conditions and slick conditions.
Yeah, they got air fences now. Come on now.
It makes you braver.
Exactly. Try hitting that wood fence. It hurts, man.
Yeah.
But you think, look at Eastbourne. Eastbourne was another track. That was a track advantage there because Bob could make that track from 1 minute to a slick to completely making it completely grippy and completely changing the whole racetrack in one night.
Yeah, listen. Like I said at the top of this this discussion topic, you know, it's a dark art, speedway track craft, and you know, Andy Meredith, to name but one track guru in the country, he looks after Bellevue and Glasgow these days. You know, these guys do. There is a science to it, and Alan Bridget was the guru back in the day, and I'm sure Alan, we might bring him on sometime from Spain and have a chat to him about all things track prep. But listen, that will do us for tonight. Thank you guys. You know, hopefully episode 2 has been a little bit slicker than episode 1. We will continue to self-critique and improve, or I will at least. These guys have been brilliant. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed taking part tonight, and it's been a thoroughly four cracking topics to pick off, and I've really enjoyed your company, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it too.
Yes, thank you.
And at home, if I could leave you with the thought, please be active for us. Please encourage others out there to pick up some of the 360 Speedway social media output and indeed the podcast. Please keep commenting, keep liking, keep sharing, and we look forward to you submitting some of your thoughts and comments to pick up and shape the agenda for next week. Until then, look after yourselves and have a great week. Enjoy your Speedway. Good night, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.